Good.
Oh, that's a really painful one to draw right now.
And it just goes back to the point you always mention with these token druid decks where you just whiff sometimes late game because you just don't have the ability to put down reasonable threats back to back to back.
Yeah, any druid deck can really whiff at the end game if you get to the innervate point, but token druid has the little extra amount of density that's lost between Power of the Wild and Ardent Squire that it makes all the difference in the world. Second shield block. He's at 11 now, possibly up to 13. And this Cruel Taskmaster, believe it or not, is really important for this turn.
13, you know, you can put yourself at 13 and then use the Cruel Taskmaster to remove.
This is tough, though. I mean, you do want to get more presence on the board also. Mm-hmm. So there is something to be said for the idea of, as much as you don't want to, paying a few points of life and getting this Faceless Manipulator down.
Right, because he's obviously drawing for damage points in some capacity. If he would have finished you off, he would have already by this point.
Right.
So you can kind of deduce that he's used one Savage Roar. He doesn't have Force of Nature. So what does he have? Maybe he has Dead Innervates. That makes you more comfortable to do this trade, so that way you can take out minions and improve your position. Reynad still not out of the woods just yet.
Yep.
Still can draw into something really nice like Ancient of Lore and put the pressure right back on him.
This play is all about stabilizing the board. He realizes that, oh my gosh.
He's one damage
off. Oh my gosh. Do you hold this?
I think you gotta hold it. He's at 9 health. Are you afraid of an Alex Strauss? No, if you commit to the Force of Nature, though.
Alex Strauss is going to blow you out of the water regardless. Yeah. I think he's got to wait, though. Because he's got Innervate in his hand, too, so even if he draws another Force of Nature, he's still got enough to cast both of them.
That is a really good point. I think with...
There's no
the more I think about it, the more I think about it, the more you're completely right. I think you have to hold it. And
there's absolutely no consideration to clearing his opponent's board here either. Even his opponent's got two health minions, but it's just Strifeco is understanding at this point that he's got to go for the win. I think clearing here would just be it's just out of the question. I think the one thing he is thinking about is how something like, whoa, that's sort of unique. I wonder why he would do that.
Calculating damage, what can his opponent be doing over the course of the turn?
I was going to say that something that there is to take into account is if you draw Ancient of Lore, you can play Ancient of Lore and draw 2 cards, and then Innervate Swipe would be lethal afterwards.
All right, well, Reynad's going to use this opportunity to play Ysera. It's now or never, really. And Fiery Warak most likely will be following it up. So Reynad's going to try to
6 points of damage.
The Ysera
awakens. Oh my gosh.
Strifeco can still end it by drawing a Savage Roar right here, or even Drew the Claw is enough as well.
Oh my gosh!
He's got it, and that's going to end the game. And Reynad's going to drop into a 1-2 hole because his Innervate allows him to push through.
Back-to-back.
Oh, man. If he armored up in some capacity, but how can you blame him? The board was clear. There's just that one opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with Reynad's play, too. He had stabilized the board. He's got to go for it. He needs to end the game within the next 2 turns because you have to shut off your opponent's draws. That's the danger of Druid when you get into this end game, is that they have such a big push for lethal damage, and that seems to be a trend of every deck we see that ends up being very strong, is they all have a way to deal 10+ damage when they get to these late game turns. So Reynad had a really strong couple of turns put together between Gorehowl, and he used the Gorehowl really well because he was using it to develop further his board. He had the option between paying life or paying for development. And he chose the development, and I agree with it, because, he had the choice between paying life or saving life. And if he chose the life route, he sacrificed development. And if he chose the development route, he sacrificed life. I think that was the best way to go for it, because he actually has to win the game. There's no way to completely stall out the game as long as he wants to, so he has to make a push for lethal at some point. So 2 very different routes to go for, but I would tend to, again, when you're in doubt, you should tend to take the aggressive road.
Okay, well, Reynad's down to his last deck. And Strifeco didn't start off the series, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And he might end the game, or it might end the series right here with his Druid. Depends on how Reynad's going to pan out. As much as the Zoo/Handlock can give Druid a nightmare of a time, Druids can start off so well that it might not even matter. So
always have to consider.
Yeah, I think at this stage, if you're Strifeco, you're still feeling pretty good, but you're kind of still worried about how the game's pan out, whether or not Strifeco gets the draws or not.
Yeah, I agree. If this is Zoo, I'm still going to be a little bit surprised that he chose to not lead with it. But again, I think the reason he didn't lead with it is to conserve information.
Sure.
But I don't know. When you have Deathwing in your deck, I feel like you want to conserve that information.
Oh man, Deathwing. You were so close to being played. You were Oh man, we still have yet to see it in a pro match, I think, at the highest level.
I've only cast Deathwing, I think, one time ever, and I had to discard 6 cards to do it. And it just
Totally worth
him. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. What do you think it's gonna be? I think it's gonna be Zoo. I mean, he's the guy who created this monstrosity, right?
Yes, let's call it that. I think so. I think he leans towards it. He understands it really well. He's the one for a long time saying how broken Nerubian Egg will be in Zoo. He's been the ambassador. I think it'd be kind of far. I wouldn't be far pressed to say that he'd be the one showing off its strengths at the moment. At the same time, that might be the perfect way to mind game your opponent as well. Because of how much he's pushed for Zoo. You play the hand lock. You mess up the mulligans. You make him second guess whether or not he's keeping something like BGH.
That's the benefit of being in that sort of position, is when you have you're able to tout yourself as the inventor of a very powerful archetype, is you can throw people that little curveball. They're like, oh, well, I know he's going to play Zoo. That's the deck he made.
Right. Ah, that's so funny. Unfortunately, Amaz gets no such accolades because there's only one iteration of Priest that we normally see. It's like, is he playing Miracle Priest?
One of these days, he's going to have a Priest deck that no one's ever seen before, and it's going to completely change everything. Like, you're just gonna, there's going to be a day where you have to ban Priest versus Amaz. That day's got to come, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think Priest is due for an innovation. I think it has the least amount of archetypes viable. So yeah, one of these people are going to come up with something cool.
I'm curious how much the 3/4 actually affects it. Let's talk about that 3/4 for a bit, actually, because it's one of the cards that a lot of people think are going to make a huge impact in Priest, but I'm actually kind of the opposite opinion. And the reason for that is it doesn't really change the way that your opponent attacks you. If you play a 3/4, that's already a hard enough minion to kill. Your opponent's likely going to be going after your smallest minions first. So now when you have a 3/4 that has a death rattle effect that benefits you for having it die, it even further disincentivizes your opponent to attack your 3/4 first, in a spot where they already likely couldn't.
Yeah, it's true, and it gives it really good stats as well. So it not only is it really intimidating, but it's also going to dictate really good trades. At the same time, though, I look at Dark Cultist, and I'm all for it. I'm saying Priests, Anduin, you're set, you're good. But then I look at cards like Spectral Knight, which are coming on the military quarter next week, and I say, well, it was fun while it lasted, Priest, because how the hell are you supposed to deal with a Spectral Knight that's 4/6 and untargetable by spells or hero powers? Not only is Spectral Knight hard to deal with, you can't even play him. You can't even play him because you can't heal him with your hero power.
Right. Well, the other thing to consider, though, is that Priest is a deck that uses Earthen Ring Farseer really well, so it can use Earthen Ring Farseer to heal the Spectral Knight.
That's true. That is a niche situation. I guess that is the capacity. The battle cries do affect it still. Maybe I guess it's a call for the Voodoo Doctor. Or is that still just Naxxramas heroic mode? I don't know.
I can't wait for Voodoo Doctor. Anyways, these players are ready to get into their mulligans. So Reynad down to his last deck. This Warlock deck's gonna have to pull out a 2/0 versus Strifeco. He's got Druid and Hunter left, and it looks like that's a Zoo deck.
All right, and he's playing Doom Guards, which was already a card under discussion of whether or not it needs to be in it. Players like RDU didn't even include Doom Guard.
I think I would always include Doom Guard. It is tough to beat a 5-mana 5/7 charge.
He's an A-lister. You know, he's not one of these guys that just is in the deck because he can be. What makes this deck so frightening, in my opinion.
The fact that
something can come out. Yeah.
Your opponent has such strong, consistent starts, and they follow it up with Doom Guard. And the Doom Guard, here's the thing, is they don't even have to always play it on turn 5. A lot of times on turn 5, they just further stabilize their board. So then, if you have a way to counteract that, say you have a board sweep, or if your play is to create tension on the board and hope that you can get value out of your next attack, Doom Guard is what sways that the other way around. So a lot of times your opponent isn't even paying a price for having Doom Guard in the deck, other than the fact that they have to take an aggressive stance. which isn't a bad thing, I don't think.
Ooh, Reynad curving out pretty poorly here. Didn't get his one drop and doesn't have a visible 3. He might have to drop something like Nerubian Egg. But part of the beauty of Zoo is that you're able to kind of curve into things naturally. So most likely he'll pick up something that he can kind of pair together to make a solid turn 3. But if he picks up like a Doom Guard, then, well, he's a little bit sad. He's a little sad.
Yeah, you're looking forward to the turn you can actually play Doom Guard, but you don't want to get stuck with it in your hand. Abusive Sergeant is a pretty poor draw right now. Your opponent doesn't really have anything going for him. So it's going to set up for your eggs in the coming turns, but you already had Dark Iron Dwarf to do that. So this Abusive Sergeant's sort of like there's a chance it gets stuck in his hand for a little bit until he can find a good way to use it. I think oftentimes it's going to be used as a 1-mana 2/1 minion.
I think so as well. He's going to pass. It's staying in your hand effectively does the same exact thing anyways. You have the 2 damage, whether it's up front or in the back end. So
yeah,
I think paying for later is fine.
There is something important to note is how important a card like Abusive Sergeant is against Druid of the Claw in taunt mode. Your opponent oftentimes will play that to try to stabilize their board, and it provides such a big swing when you can buff a 2-power minion into a 4 and then use something like one of your smaller minions or a Dark Iron Dwarf in addition to that to push through a Druid of the Claw. Because if they're playing Druid on 5, you're going into your turn 5. And you notice that Reynad has Dark Iron Dwarf, and he already has Abusive Sergeant, so that's something we can be looking forward to as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a slow start here from Reynad, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. Because of the nature of this matchup, if you can't put together a strong early aggression like without Flame Imp or something, this is the kind of push you want to be making, is you want to make these really efficient mid-game plays. So outside of something like Keeper, Reynad's turns are going to be really strong. He feels uncomfortable because Keeper is in his opponent's range, but it's not there right now. So as uncomfortable as he feels, we know that it's actually pretty good for him. And I think what he's considering here is how important it is to pop this egg or keep the egg because of a card like Keeper.
Even so, sometimes if you pop the egg a little bit prematurely, you set yourself up for like a swipe play. And it's cool that you spent the time removing it. In fact, you kind of helped your opponent be able to layer in the turns accordingly. So you have to kind of be very careful about it. I do know that it's very difficult to also pick up a guaranteed double Argus value. Unless it's late game where you have a lot of low drops. So it is hard to justify it. But I think Reynad's going to go for this trade instead and just take out this Harvest Golem immediately.
Yep.
It does open yourself to the Keeper, but
a lot of people think that Zoo doesn't have a lot of decisions to make, but honestly, this is where all the decisions are made, is interpreting how your opponent's played so far and what that means for the range of cards in their hand. So you have a lot of different ways where your board gets into a spot where you're fragile to a lot of different things that can happen. So the interpretation of how your opponent's played and what that means for their hand is of paramount importance. And it's a spot that you can't fall into and just be vulnerable to everything. That's what this whole game is about, is that interpretation. And these early turns for Zoo are so critical. If you get disrupted, you can fall way behind because, again, your deck has such low draw density when it hits turn 6 and 7 that if your opponent isn't low enough to shut out the game, you need to continue to crush your opponent's board. That's what all of these thought processes are. So these turns, they look like they could be really easy, and some people will happenstance spot the play that Reynad's going to make, but there's a lot more being taken into consideration than just, should I punch my opponent's minions this turn? Should I use all these cards? Everything matters. So that's why he's thinking through every single play.
All right, well, StrifeCrow now has found himself a little bit in a pickle. He does have responses to it. He's got a double combo, by the way.
I don't know if that's going to be able to make a push on life totals, though. I think it's going to have to use strictly on the board.
I think Force of Nature is definitely a premium removal spell against Zoo because you're able to kind of displace the damage accordingly. The difficult thing is whether or not your opponent's going to be able to put itself out of range and make it kind of inconvenient.
Right. I think he's actually thinking about double Savage Roar here, honestly, because it's one of the poorest cards in this matchup. And if he double Savage Roars here, he'd be able to clear out both of the 4/4s.
Yeah.
And so the debate to him, I think, is just if it's more important to get down this Druid of the Claw, which I think the answer is no. Your opponent has so many strong answers to Druid of the Claw in this spot. I think that double Savage Roar is really not that bad of a play.
His follow-ups would still be pretty weak. But at the same time, the Druid of the Claw can also turn out to be really just as weak, if not weaker. So I think you're right in this respect. I think you gotta just clear the board. Like any opportunity you have an opportunity, you can clear the board against Zoo, and you have follow-up removal. I think is usually a good deal. But maybe Strifeco sees something that we don't with a follow-up play.
Yeah, this is going to be a rough turn. Raynad's got some really strong plays here. So this plus Direwolf Alpha, I imagine.
Yeah, and get that immediate trade. I don't think positioning actually matters.
It doesn't, unless he has a Panda in his deck or something. I don't think it's going to matter much.
No.
But Dark Iron, it's good to be in the habit of having your Dark Iron Dwarf. I think stay healthier because that's the one that is most likely to get used. Like say it gets sapped later on in the game. Your opponent's more likely to sap a 5/4 than they are to sap a 5/1.
Yeah.
I like going for face here as well. He's got to start pressuring his opponent. He's lost a lot of his early game pressure, having to fight for the board, and now that he's got the board, he's going to have to make sacrifices.
Yeah. Now that Strifeco does have Lotheb, but still he needs to kind of use his Force of Nature to kind of stabilize what is on the board. Lotheb would just be cannon fodder, essentially, to what your opponent can do.
Right.
Okay, well, Reynad definitely has to be feeling pretty decent. The Force of Nature is usually a desperation move.
That's not a bad draw right now. So now this is another tough turn. Does he want to use Life Tap, or does he want to develop all of his minions? This is
if you have Doom Guards, like before, it was kind of like a case where you can kind of argue about it as well. Especially when Doom Guard's being taken out, you can kind of make a justification for tapping almost always, just because you kind of want to play the game extended. You want to draw into those because sometimes you get situational cards and you want to draw more ways to impact the board immediately. But when you have stuff like Doom Guard, I am definitely in favor for dumping your hand almost always.
Yep. I think the thing that's considered here is how long it takes for Egg to actually get value. The longer he waits for Egg, the less effective it becomes.
Also true. Also true.
And now another tough
value.
Strifeco. Yeah.
How do you kind of approach this turn?
This is a really strong turn to use Force of Nature, but I think it's probably better to wait. It looks to me like Lotheb. It looks to me like Lotheb's just better right now. That's a lot of damage to be facing down, but I mean, you can't just like keep clearing your opponent's board if they're drawing 2 cards a turn, because what's going to end up happening is if he continues to have no minions and clears his opponent's board, he's going to find himself in the exact same position turn after turn. His opponent's going to put minions on the board and he has to clear them. So he has to create tension at some point. So the only reason I think he's not doing it here is because of how much damage that the Direwolf Alphas are representing. So each Direwolf Alpha he kills, it effectively is taking 4 damage off the board. So that's really the difference between attacking here and not attacking. I'm sorry, between using Lotheb here and not using Lotheb.
Plus a Lotheb, or plus the Direwolf Alpha gives a very powerful way for Zoo to trade. Well, talking about powerful turns and moves, that's a really good 2 sequence of draws to Life Tap immediately into the perfect curve and not dumping a single hand, not losing efficiency. And Strifeco is on the ropes.
Yeah, that's bad news.
That is a top deck for the ages.
Keeper's not going to get it done. Guy's 1 mana off making all the plays he wants to make.
Really tough. Lotheb's not even that effective against this board. More often than not, they only really have Soulfire, maybe a power.
You got a Lotheb though, right? You just need a minion on the board.
I think you need something. Something is better than nothing. But his opponent has 8 damage.
He's got 9 damage.
He's got 9 damage. I can't count.
Yep. So Soulfire's not quite lethal.
Second Doom Guard. Oh, well, his own Lotheb.
It's a Lotheb of his own, which is a pretty good draw.
That is.
5/5s are just threatening right now, and that's the major difference. You know, something to note, I'm actually sort of surprised that Reynad is playing Lotheb in so many decks when he intends to play Miracle Rogue. It's just that good of a minion? I think it is, but man, it feels a little bit weird to be playing in Zoo. I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong about that. Do you replace a Doom Guard with one of those? I don't know where that fits in.
Actually, that makes sense. It makes sense. Because you don't want to mess up your curve too badly as Zoo. Yep. So I think maybe even running only 1 Doom Guard. Plus, a lot of times you...
that also prevents you from getting the dreaded double Doom Guard early draws.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You get both of them. They're kind of dead. And plus, that allows you to kind of play around the cards. Say if you have a Doom Guard, you don't have to worry about drawing the second one as well. So Yeah, so Strife Crow picks up Dark, not Dark, the Black Knight. The Dark Knight is a very different thing.
Yep.
Equally as epic, though.
You know, if he didn't have Lotheb here, and Strife Crow had Innervate, would that have won the game?
Double Savage Roar would have put 12 damage on the board, plus the 6.
18. Yeah, if he didn't have Lotheb and he drew Innervate.
Oh, man, that would have been
enough.
crazy. What
That's
a way to
funny.
surprise
Yeah, well, look at that. Lotheb potentially saved him from losing.
Well,
that was
Reynad only needs 1 damage.
Yep.
And he's going to do it with the egg. And Reynad's still in this series. We're going to game number 5.
Wow. Zoo is doing what Zoo does. And that it just shows how strong and consistent this deck is. It opened up very poorly relative to what its strongest draws are, and it was still able to keep control of the game and just slowly take over and make its push for lethal. It's just a consistent... At this point, it's gone from being a very early open deck to just being a very consistent and powerful deck throughout the course of the game. With these next cards. Cards like Egg and cards like Haunted Creeper give it a lot of staying power.
Oh, definitely. And board control is exactly what Blizzard intended to drive the gravity of the game towards. And that's what Naxxramas has created. Fighting more for that board control, more minion-on-minion action, and more interaction as a result, which is really cool. Now Strife Crow is down to his last deck. And it's going to be really epic, and we're going to find out what's going to happen. But I think we're going to take a quick break before game number 5. And when we return, we'll see the conclusion of this series between Reynad and Strife Crow. And we're back with the WEC Championships qualifier for North America. We're getting ready for game number 5 between Reynad and Strife Crow, where this determines it all. Whether or not Reynad Zoo versus Strife Crow's... I'm drawing a blank. Hunter, that's right, the Hunter deck. Thank you, Admiral. You're keeping me grounded. Now, we assume that this is kind of the mid-range Hunter. It's make a comeback in vogue. It's very powerful still. It has cards like the Web Spinner and the Haunted Creeper to also bolster its ranks. But still, it kind of struggles with the Zoo matchup. Unless you have things like the Explosive Trap or you draw into Unleash the Hounds to give you a big advantage early on, it still feels like you're fighting a battle that is almost like a time bomb because you can't really keep up with the pace at which Zoo is able to continue to put out pressure.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's a mid-range Hunter, but I'm curious if it's going to be a different kind of mid-range Hunter. Because I think traditionally moving into this match, if he thought that... Like, if he was playing a traditional mid-range Hunter, wouldn't he have just banned his opponent's Miracle? Like, that's the match where you're weakest against, I think. So unless he feels confident in his ability to actually dodge that matchup, I think it would be weird to not ban Miracle Rogue here. So this may be a mid-range Hunter, but it may be something that's tuned a little bit differently. I wouldn't be surprised to see some taunts coming out of this deck, to be perfectly honest with you. Because the other thing that's going to do is that's going to help stabilize your game against Zoo, which Zoo is another matchup that Hunter traditionally has some problems with.
Maybe it was not really the fact that he was looking at Miracle, but maybe the problems that Hunter brings. Because he did ban Reynad's Hunter, and I wonder how he kind of views it relative to his other matchups. That Hunter might give his other decks a hard time. So
That's
we're
a
not
possibility.
sure. Not sure.
But
We can maybe ask him as well. Maybe after the series is over. The game is ready for the mulligan, so let's jump into the board and find out what happens in the conclusion of this series. As we're about to discover what kind of Hunter that
Kodo.
Strifeko is playing. He is playing a Kodo, so it is a mid-range.
Yeah, I'm still sort of curious what's going to be coming out of this deck. It's definitely a mid-range-ish deck. Like I think it's hard to play an all-out aggro deck right now, especially with Nerubian Egg being a card, because the aggro deck relies so much on traps to be pushing through its damage that when you get into a race against a Nerubian Egg, that's not the kind of race you want to be in. Because your opponent your card activates your opponent's Nerubian Egg. That's not the deal you want to be in.
Timberwolf is also a card that does improve the Zoo matchup a lot, assuming you draw into Unleash the Hounds. Oftentimes, Unleash the Hounds is the draw mechanic, and it's rare that you're able to kind of get for like a full board clear. Even you get to use like Hunter's Mark on things unoptimal, like a Void Walker to burst through. But Timberwolf allows you to push through that extra damage, so another important card for Strifeko. And he also has Houndmaster, which is a nice way to kind of stabilize the board. So Strifeko curving out pretty well here.
Yeah, I would really be surprised if he doesn't attack this Haunted Creeper. King Muckla even in his hand.
Oh,
King
yeah.
Muckla you don't give a
bananas. Well, he gives 2 bananas. So you can't say he doesn't give bananas, but
he doesn't give us something that rhymes with Muckla. Anyways, right? This is going to be an animal companion for sure.
Oh man,
Huffer, I don't think is a bad one. Misha, I think Misha's his most dangerous one, honestly, because it makes him vulnerable to every buff spell, and it also makes him vulnerable to Soulfire. So not what he wanted to see, I don't think.
Definitely not. And he does have a way to easily deal with it with something like the Direwolf Alpha, maybe even a Jungle. The Jungle might be really good as well. But Muckla also gets lots of value early on if you're able to kind of clear your opponent's board and make it very dangerous.
I think he's going to go for a Jungle here, honestly. I think this is a... No, I don't know, because he doesn't want to play into... He doesn't really want to play into Unleash the Hounds. This is kind of a tough turn.
Well, you still have 1 turn before Unleash the Hounds. So you can take this opportunity to build the board now. It is a bit of a tough call. But I want to see where this Juggle lands first.
Oh, this is huge.
Nice! Oh. It hits a really important target.
Yep. I'd like to see the attack with the Voidwalker for... Actually, I think you just attack your opponent's face.
Yeah, there's no beast energy, so what are you really worried about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I just remembered that. I was like, wait a minute, these aren't beasts. I'm so used to everything in this deck being a beast when it's on the board. Ooh, I don't like using the shield, though.
Make yourself a little bit more resilient to... No, explosive trap's about the same. I think the thought is that you only need 1 dog to push through the Divine Shield versus you might need 2 dogs to push through the Voidwalker.
Okay, that's fair enough. This is a really brutal turn. Wow. He's just gonna have to play Houndmaster with nothing.
Oh man, that stinks.
Yeah,
stings like a sludge belcher.
This is why this matchup is so hard for
Soulfire. Oh
my gosh,
that is brutal.
Yeah, and that's a big board.
He almost didn't even have to use Soulfire.
Yeah, he wanted to juggle and then use this 2-1 afterwards. Is he still considering using a minion here?
Well, I guess you hedge your bets immediately against something like Explosive Trap or even Unleash the Hounds, right? You want to trade in. Don't let him get value off Unleash the Hounds immediately.
Yeah, it definitely matters. You have to kill this guy somehow, and it's a matter of just how you do it. And I like the Soulfire. Just make a big push for damage. Your opponent's in such a bad position as it is.
Strifeko does have the Buzzard, though.
Yep, he needs Unleash. And Unleash being 3 mana really hurts now.
Yeah. Difficult position. I mean, the Kodo is great to get the value, but you have a Mukla staring right back at you.
Yeah.
It's got 11, 13, 14 damage.
Wow. I don't know if there's any way that Strifeko legitimately gets out of this game without an Unleash draw.
Yeah, that was a really big one. I mean, tracking might be able to pair it for the following turn, and you have it for Timberwolf, Buzzard, and the Unleash. But is that too late? Is that too late?
I think you got to play Kodo. Oh my gosh.
That is so hard. I think I like the Kodo because then you still can tracking into Unleash the following turn, and you still might be able to draw some magic.
And the Kodo can at least soak up 6 points of damage here. Like, it'll kill one of his minions, then it likely gets attacked by Mukla too.
Oh, he was one card off.
Pounds. Wow.
Hurts. Whoa. Oh my god. I guess he's going to use his Timberwolf now to clear.
I don't know if he can't use Timberwolf. I think he... Oh, he's just going to use it now. Okay.
Yeah. Immediately try to get the value clear. Okay. Deal with whatever he can. But this has been a disaster, at least for Strife Crow, in terms of the... immediately, he didn't have an opportunity, but that Unleash the Hounds was still really clutch. But imagine if he was able to pull it off a little bit earlier.
Wow, he's actually going to be able to climb back into this game because of Houndmaster next turn. If Reyna needs to attack this Timberwolf, or it's going to potentially see 5 points of damage out of the Mukla. Oh, he's going to go straight for the dome. This game just got really crazy.
Even so, if he Houndmasters this turn, if he Houndmasters, he still can kind of push through. So he's not out of the woods just yet, but he still made it a little bit more.
Oh my gosh, look at this. He's going to double Banana and take out the Dark Iron Dwarf. Oh, this is really bad for Reynad. That is a terrible spot to be in.
Oh, I forgot about the bananas.
And just what you were talking about, that Timberwolf is making the difference in winning or losing this game.
Oh, man. I completely forgot about the bananas. You're right. That is devastating.
Oh, that Dark Iron Dwarf basically tricked him into attacking his opponent's face instead of attacking the Timberwolf.
Well, now Strife Crow might be able to pull back right here with because he can continue to stabilize. He has cards like Savannah Highmane. He has things like Eagle Hornbow to also pressure, but I think you don't want to drop your health too low. The Kodo is also going to potentially be back-breaking as well.
Yep. I agree with this play too. You're so far ahead in terms of development potential that there's no reason to sort of...
oh my god, the Kodo...
He's got to play his minions, right? How else does he win? He's just got to go for it, I think.
Yeah, it's too optimistic to assume that you're going to be able to get anything else out of this. Yeah. Man, that Unleash and Timberwolf was the answer for Strife Crow. And now let's see what he draws with the Animal Companion.
Wow, and this Kodo's actually able to take out the Direwolf Alpha every time.
Yeah.
Because it's buffing both of the Abusive Sergeants.
Oh, that is really devastating once more for Reynad. And he's going to have to deal with 3/5 minion, not to mention that the bow can kind of be a good follow-up. Yep. Strife Crow Companion is super safe, though.
I think he's going to Companion first, which I agree with. I like Companioning here. If you get something like a Misha, yep. Oh my gosh. That is just so important right now. Wow, he's actually going to go for the minion, too. I'm really surprised by that. 14, and then he could have 9 the next turn. I think he actually... That was a pretty big mistake, I think, because if he just goes for face... Oh, his opponent's going to life tap anyway. So, this is just 18 points of damage now, right? 10, 13, 16, 18. Yeah, that's game. I can't believe that Strife Crow turned this game around.
Wow, what a way to swing the game in his favor. And I'm just kind of sitting here in awe of what just happened because it looked like he was dead.
I thought for sure he was losing that game. And he
very managed to come back.
Out.
And Reynad falls 2-3. Strife Crow moves on to the next round to face off Firebat. And a very, I think you have to be kind of tilted if you're Reynad. I mean, I don't want to kind of put words in his mouth because he might be able to move on from it. But you felt like you were in a good position. Mukla came out on a really good board. You were just worried about that one Unleash card. But even then, how many mid-range hunters still play Timberwolf? Not many.
I don't even think that you can really account for the Timberwolf. I think he played it right the whole step of the way. And honestly, once he draws the Dark Iron Dwarf, it probably still is better to attack your opponent because it's 2 extra damage. But the Dark Iron Dwarf kind of tricks him into attacking his opponent instead of attacking the Timberwolf. And it ends like that singular draw. It's like a good card, but it ends up being pretty unlucky that he drew that card, honestly. So, like, if you think deep enough, you can still find a reason to attack the Timberwolf, but do you really want your opponent to have a 1/7 Timberwolf?
Yeah.
That's a pretty tough spot to be in. I don't know.
For sure. But you know what? Reynad's not out of it yet. He'll be playing tomorrow. And we can take a look at a bracket to see where he falls. I think he falls on the opposite side. Oh, no, he's going to be playing a Maz. All right. So Maz will be playing against Reynad tomorrow, a battle of the big streamers. That'll be in the lower bracket. Meanwhile, we're going to continue on the day with Alchemix versus Reels and Tides of Time versus Brad to finish out the lower half of the bracket. It might feel like it's not as, it doesn't include as many big names, but let me reassure you that these players are just as skilled, if not more, across the board. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get the second half of the winners bracket, the quarterfinals, underway. Welcome back, everybody, to the World Esports Championship for Hearthstone. We are halfway through our quarterfinals, where we just saw Shrefko narrowly defeat Raynad 3-2. It wasn't easy, but he's out of the woods for now. And he'll have to take on a really intimidating opponent in Firebat in the second round. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to our next quarterfinal matchup between Alchemix versus Reels. Now, these two guys, I like them a lot, and I respect their deck building that people don't really give them enough credit for. These guys, maybe not, they're not the biggest innovators from the core, but they're able to kind of take what decks are and refine them to that they're very good for their own styles. Alchemix, he's a guy that likes playing very specific stuff. He loves playing aggro too, which is really cool because it feels like every pro player kind of looks down on aggro to a certain extent. They don't respect it as much, but Alchemix is a guy saying, I love aggro. I embrace it. He's like the Nimsh type of thought here. So I think Alchemist is going to surprise some people, but at the same time, Reels is very solid. When he's on his game, Reels is actually one of the most explosive and best players in Hearthstone.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And you hit the nail on the head when talking about deck building with these guys. They don't make a lot of innovation in terms of creating new decks, but who does really at the end of the day? Once the decks are created, they're created. But something they do very well is they pick the right lineups and they understand their game plans. Pretty much second to none. These are guys that they know what they're supposed to be doing coming into these lineups and in their matchups. And when they know that there's certain game plans that they're weak to, they put in a couple tech cards to really help that out. So Reels is the kind of guy who he plays Freeze Mage when it's really good. He'll play Druid when it's really good. He'll play anything. The point that he's trying to get across is that I know when to play these decks, and not only that, but I know how to play them. And that's what makes him such a potent player. And at the same time, Alchemist, what makes him such a potent player is that his dedication to aggro starts to pour over into a point where you're getting to like a mastery level with aggro. You understand every single matchup. You know how to make pushes. You know how to put your opponents into decisions where they have to take two very different routes to continue the game, and they feel uncomfortable taking either one, and that allows your opponents to make errors. And so that's really one of the strengths that he's pulling into this. So this matchup, a clash of players that really understand the matchups going into it, and these lineups, I mean, you just look at Alchemist's lineups, they're always something crazy. It seems like he's got a hunter and a warrior in every single lineup. And one of the scary things to think about is this an aggro hunter or is this an aggro warrior or not? Because this is the kind of decks that he likes to play. And then Reels, of course, coming through with a very solid lineup. It's no surprise to see Paladin. I think Sludge Belcher has really taken Paladin to another level. And there's something else to note about Alchemist here. He's actually not playing Rogue, which really surprises me, because this is where he gets a chance to throw in his curveball. So his Rogue is often going to pull a ban in this spot because his opponents know that he's going to be able to play either Aggro Rogue or Miracle Rogue, and they don't want to be playing against either one of them, frankly. So I'm a little bit surprised to not see it in his lineup, but that could just be because he's fed up with it. I know that he's another player that also is he's a little bit fed up with how seemingly overpowered Rogue is as well, and frankly, I can't blame him. So coming into this, I'd be surprised if there wasn't two aggro decks in this lineup. And with Reels, it would be peculiar to not see a few surprises in these decks as well. I could potentially see up to 6 Sludge Belchers throughout these 3 decks.
Awesome. I would love that. I would love that. Now, I do want to kind of follow up one thing more with Alchemist before we move on to Reels and talk about him. Alchemist, if you can kind of guess, and despite him being an aggro player, if you can kind of guess which hero he actually favored the most, it isn't actually the 100. His first class that he got 500 wins with and got the golden hero portrait was with Warrior, and he played Control Warrior. So as much as he is an aggro player, he can definitely flip the coin and go immediately in the control style play. So he knows that deck. That's the deck he likes climbing ladder with the most too. It's very consistent. You kind of respond to the aggro. So just like you said, he knows and understands aggro, but at the same time he knows how to kill it. So that's also his greatest strength. Let's move on to Reels real quick and talk about some of the stuff that he likes to do. He likes to play according to very like scientifically Hearthstone. Like if you kind of look at his stream and watch it and just hear his commentary, not only do you hear lots of good bits of knowledge and golden nuggets, but you also hear how he dissects the game and how he's able to play opportunities versus hard choices. I think that's one thing I like about Reels is that he looks at everything as an opportunity to be able to play for good percentages. He builds his decks, just like you said, very uniquely to fit whatever it curtails to his play style. And I'm curious to see what he's going to bring with his Paladin, because the Paladins in the past, you can kind of chalk it up to teams, right? Cloud9 has this Paladin. Kalento, Nimsh, Ecop, and Strifeco. They all play this Paladin. You can kind of consume that they're doing it all in a concerted effort. So maybe it's all a little bit similar in the end. Is Reel's going to bring something completely different now that he's on Mana Grind, a team that's kind of isolated? And honestly, at this point on an island in terms of competitive Hearthstone, we don't really know where Mana Grind sits. So Reel's is kind of on his own. I want to see what this Paladin deck is going to bring to the table.
I think it's going to be something similar, I would say, to Cloud9's version. At the end of the day, Paladin has a lot of strong cards that are sort of musts. Like when you look at True Silver Champion and Consecrate and Equality and those sorts of things, it really adds up to a distinct curve that's building up. So then a lot of it happens to be, like we saw in the first game where Strifeco was playing Paladin, how early he played Unstable Ghoul. And RDU had touched on the fact that Unstable Ghoul is a really good Leroy counter. When you get sort of into the later stage of the game, you can play it and disrupt their mana, and it allows you to get 1 extra turn to restabilize your board position. That's the kind of mistake that, if that ends up being a mistake, it's hard to call whether or not it is. I don't think that anyone in the world has enough experience right now to be able to determine whether or not that's a mistake. But if that's the intent of that sort of card, that's the sort of thing that I would expect Reels to have figured out by now. So coming into these later stages, he's going to be looking to use his taunts with a deck like Paladin to disrupt his opponent's curve and sort of move forward. I expect all of these decks, though, to be built very similarly, just by the nature of how the cards line up with each other and how they work. It'd be tough to see more than a 2 or 3 card difference, I think.
I completely agree. Now let's take a quick second before the series starts because these guys are still setting up everything. I think Rios actually had problems with the stream, making sure the delay was working. And these guys are very honorable as well. They want to make sure the integrity of competition is upheld. So we have a little bit of delay there. We apologize. You think what do you think would be a good leadoff for both of these guys in respect to each other's lineups?
Well, I think safe choices are the best bet coming in. And when I think of safe choices, one of the things I think about is with Reels. He likes to lead with Druid a lot. And this is sort of an outdated reference that I'm going to make, but during Tavern Takeover, he was playing Druid with a couple of silver bullet cards in there, and he was leading with it a lot. And the reason he was playing that deck is because it was such a safe lead, and then the silver bullets allowed you to, in any matchup, have a blowout card. And then once you had more information about your opponent's lineup, you could play your next deck how you needed to play it, and that there was really no strong lead against Druid, and that's what made it such a strong lead. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him play that. And then if Alchemist is sort of in line with that same thinking, either Hunter or Shaman, I think, would probably be what he goes with. So I think Druid Shaman is a pretty likely lead off here. But again, we saw Strifecrow lead with Paladin, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Reels do the same either.
Okay, well, the series is starting. We are prepared, so there's good news. Let's begin the series between Alchemix and Reels and find out who's going to get one step closer to that WEC finals in September. It looks like it's going to be the Hunter to start off for Alchemix. And meanwhile, we will see the Druid for Reels. Good call.
This looks like a mid-range Hunter, too. Explosive Trap is still one of those cards that I don't feel good about running anymore, simply because Egg exists. I just don't want a card in my deck that activates my opponent's 0/2 for them, that turns into a 4/4. Like, I want them to have to do that hard work, not me. Am I the only one? Am I the only one?
No, you're certainly not the only one, but you're the only one with a platform like this to kind of broadcast his opinion. So,
well, this is the second Explosive Trap we've seen this tournament so far, too.
Yeah. We saw Firebat also run one, too.
Yeah, so there's at least 2 players who disagree with me.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's about, I don't know, 18,000 people in chat who disagree with me.
How many people are watching?
I don't know, probably. I mean, I'm assuming there's at least some people that agree with me, right?
Sure.
Come on.
I think we can agree at least that this Harvest Golem Innervate is a good play.
Yeah, there's not really much else he can do. So you just play the Harvest Golem and then Hero Power and then another Harvest Golem. So it's a lot of damage that starts adding up, and then he wants to make the push to Savage War. We haven't seen if he's token or if he's sort of the regular mid-range Druid deck yet, though. So that's something to consider.
Sure.
Not an exciting tracking.
Not really, just because Kodo doesn't really often pick up good value that often against Druid. There is Keeper, there is Harvest Golems, there is the Haunted Creepers, and maybe an Argent Squire. But even then, it's not very often where it can be very consistent. So
there's Keeper. I agree with taking Animal Companion, though. It's easily the best card of the 3.
Okay, well, Alchemist can push out something here with the Animal Companion and the coin. Or you can also choose to just be really passive, save the coin for really good uses when he picks up more powerful draws.
I wouldn't mind seeing an Owl here, actually. Owl's hard to use, and one of the things it's going to do is it's going to make sure that this Harvest Golem isn't picking up too much more. And something that you're looking forward to is the ability to just curve into using Houndmaster effectively. So if he's not able to use Houndmaster effectively, it really takes a lot of the power out of this deck, especially when he's already got to draw this way.
I think the downside of Animal Companion can be so big, though. If you draw the Huffer, it could be super bad, just because if your opponent's able to respond to it immediately, able to take it out. It's just really difficult to deal with.
Here's the other thing to consider is, what's his turn 3 look like when he chooses to use Animal Companion here? His turn 3 seems like it's pretty weak.
Well, he wants to obviously silence the owl and kill it before the Harvest Golem is able to do it. So that was the game plan, rather than kind of do it retroactively and then have the owl die immediately. So in that respect, Alchemist has a plan. I'm not sure exactly what it looks like to Reels, but it seems like he has a natural 3-drop lined up, maybe second on Animal Companion or something.
Ooh, Freezing Trap. Freezing Trap's not a bad one.
Well, there's 2 ways to deal with these Harvest Golems then.
I kind of like Freezing Trap here a lot. Ironbeak Owl will kind of help ensure that you get another minion on the board, though, but it does make you a little bit weaker to swipe.
The more I think about it, I think the more freezing trap's important, just to kind of set the tempo out of whack for your opponent.
Yep.
Especially if he does have swipe. I think it's a really good hedge bet. Like, I'm using more terms that you like to use, so.
Well, I mean, hedge is it's a good term, right? That's what you're that's exactly what you're doing.
And it's a good alliteration to poker as well.
Investing in general.
So he's going to forgo and just try to clear immediately, which is very important. Coming up on a Houndmaster turn, you just don't want to give your opponent an opportunity to kind of build what it has.
Ooh, he's not going to be able to prevent that one, though.
Yeah.
Well, he can, but he's not going to
Savage Roar.
He's not going to Savage Roar this, I don't think. I think this is a very easy Harvest Golem turn. Of course, he draws Wrath to make it not so easy anymore. But I still think it's a pretty easy Harvest Golem turn.
You like Harvest over the Yeti?
Yeah, I do, yeah. Yeti gives you a really clean 6 if you want. You can either play the Argent Commander or you can play the Yeti and use Wrath. But if you play the Harvest Golem, your opponent doesn't have any good minions to target. So like in this position, Kill Command's great on Chill and Yeti, but the Kill Command's not good on any of the minions the other way around. And it also makes your turns a little bit cleaner. Like I don't think you're just trying to pressure your opponent out of the game. There's still a little bit of a battle to be made here. But this Yeti, what that tells me though is that he wants to start taking an aggressive stance. So perhaps he's thought about the turns a little bit more in advance than we have.
Well, he really hopes his opponent doesn't have Black Knight, but he does have Argent Commander, another way to deal with it immediately. Second Wrath.
Does Argent Commander deal with this right now?
No, not really.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
Well, I mean, he can immediately kill off the taunt, which is the big problem, but you still have to do it with the Houndmaster as well.
You know, if he had this Harvest Golem down, this turn would look a lot better.
But he wouldn't have the Yeti.
But he would be able to use 2 Harvest Golems and then a Wrath and then play the Yeti though. So he'd have a fresh Yeti on the board.
Also true. Also true. Good counterpoint.
I think it's just he played it a little bit too quickly, I think.
What to do?
Well, from here, I think you still can utilize everything. You can even push out the Harvest Golem and still be able to Wrath and draw a card even. And if you do, you kind of want to see what you do with that respect. But you can also just kind of go for a full clear.
Yeah, this is probably his second best option.
You don't like Wrathing for an extra card?
I don't think you need the extra card right now. I think you just need board development.
Okay. Okay, I can understand.
I feel like it's more important because your turns are going to be so aggressive going into the next ones. Like Argent Commander is almost certainly going for face.
Ooh.
Oh wow,
that is a very nice draw. Unleash with the buzzard to kind of remove everything here. Can't really ask for anything better for Alchemist, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's a really tough one.
He's tilting his head.
He even has multiple options though. Still, he could even play Explosive Trap if he wanted to. I would like to see him save the Explosive Trap for against combo. Oh wow, and he picks up a Houndmaster too.
Nice, not bad. Tracking throughout the curve.
Into a Savannah!
I mean, okay, and he is playing Web Spinner, which is cool. Again, not everyone is fond of the spider that's come out recently, but I personally love it.
And now Harvest Golem is looks a little bit less exciting, but you know it's what you have left.
Certainly, certainly. Now Reels, again, he has a very clear mandate to kind of go and attack with what cards he has left, but Alchemist has ways to stall for it. He has like the Houndmaster, he has the Explosive Trap as well. So I think Alchemist is still sitting in a really good position. Not to mention that he's up on cards, which often isn't the case against Druid. A lot of times the Druid is up on cards, and Druid's kind of the Hunter's one top decking trying to end the game.
This is a significant amount of damage from Reels, though. I mean, Force of Nature can potentially end this.
All right. Well, you know, he also has the opportunity to just Savage Roar swipe and end the game, assuming Alchemist doesn't able to clear it, which he should be able to based off the cards that he has in his hand. Deadly Shot can do so much work against his Argent Commander. But how much do you feel threatened by being able to die to the combo?
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider.
So do you need a Houndmaster?
It's tough. I don't mind seeing a deadly shot here either.
Take the 50-50.
Well, it's not truly a 50-50 because Unleash the Hounds is still really good afterwards.
But then you can't have master, so then. I wonder if you can opportunity to use.
If he win, here's the thing: if he wins the 50-50, like he basically just wins the game. Like if he hits the Argent Commander with Deadly Shot, it's like almost impossible to lose the game from here. But it's just the way that this game is panning out, it's pretty tough to lose the game. Like if your opponent is that big game hunter or Black Knight in this spot, which I think it's like with only 3 cards in his hand, it's hard for him to have one of these cards.
Oh,
oh, jeez, that is a huge deadly shot. And
we doubled up Alchemix, by the way.
Yeah, that's like a nail in the coffin sort of spot.
He's feeling in control. Reel's stream has dropped, by the way, but we have double Alchemix for double the goodness. So Reels is going to come back with us soon. But in the meantime, he's not looking at the best of positions.
Alchemixception.
Sure. We heard you like Alchemix. Oh, Reels is back. Maybe. All right. Well, apparently there was also a disconnect that we're about to witness. And based off those rules, I think Alchemix ends up taking the game. Sorry to make it anticlimactic, but we're just getting word from the admin right now that there was internet problems for Reels, which is quite unfortunate if this is actually the case. We're about to find out. Yeah, I think so. With this kind of inactivity from Reels and a lack of reaction, I'm almost inclined to believe that this is the case. And that's a really tough loss for Reels right off the bat. Losing his Druid, a very consistent deck, and having internet problems must be very unsettling. Reels is a kind of an emotional player. I'm really sad for him at the moment.
You know what? It's like it's tough because he does have a couple of draws that can end up winning, but this is a lot of damage coming out from Alchemix this next turn. Like Reels actually has to do something about this board right now, or he's just dead.
Yeah,
so
unless he top deck like Keep for the Grove to immediately respond.
It's a disconnect, but I think at the end of the day that Alchemix just ends up winning this game anyway.
Sure. Kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually like if you have to consider the realm of disconnects, it's not that unfortunate of a spot to disconnect because you just win the game. Like your opponent just wins the game so often.
I think with it's actually good.
Yep. So Reels is gonna follow game 1. It's on the back of a disconnect, but that likely did not influence the outcome of this match anyway. He's facing down 12 points of damage, and then also lethal if he's not able to finish it. Whoa. So, game 1's going to be going over to Alchemix, and sort of mid-range Hunter really showing why it's so strong versus Druid. It's able to fend off these early turns, and when it starts scaling into the mid-game, Hunter's mid-game is like a late game, and that's what makes the deck so strong. But if you're able to disrupt that, it falls apart. Like it crumbles under the ability to not. It crumbles under the pressure of disruption because it relies on synergy from all of its cards. So that's the weakness of it, and that's why Miracle Rogue has such a good matchup. But that's why it strives so much. Why it does so well against Druid is because Druid relies on efficient minion trading. So game 1's going to be going over to Reels. I'm sorry, to Alchemix.
Yep.
Reels is going to fall, and I think that he's got to go with Paladin here because if I'm not incorrect, I think Paladin does really well versus Hunter, regardless of which version.
Still a little bit of a unexplored matchup, to be honest. I've still yet to see a Pioneer who can truly define it and whether or not a matchup's good or not for Paladin in respect to the other decks in the metagame. But it seems like people are figuring out more and more. I don't really know, to be honest. I'm in your boat. I haven't played too much Paladin. I tried copying a little bit of what we saw last week, but of course that was last week's decks, and then now Nax Rammus hit. I was like, well, this Paladin deck's a little useless to me at the moment. So I haven't really figured out too much for myself. But I do think that the Sludge Belchers have improved the matchups considerably for the Paladin. So if Reels chooses to go for that, I wouldn't be surprised to see it play more of that mid-range control style. I really don't think it's an aggro Paladin. We haven't seen Divine Favor Paladin in a while in tournaments, and I think they've really fallen out of favor.
Aggro Paladin is a really ladder type of deck, in my opinion, in that you can really abuse certain spots with it where people are falling into trends of just playing the same 2 decks over and over again. And then those decks where Aggro Paladin happens to be really good, it makes a big difference. But in something like a tournament, it's very different because your opponents are going to often have balanced lineups. So unless your Paladin is very aimed at a deck that you really believe all of your opponents are going to play, it feels like it's a pretty poor choice overall. So it can surprise, certainly, and it's important to mix in those kind of aggro decks from time to time because tournament lists don't always stay honest enough to beat them. But
Sure.
It's always a surprise when you see it. Again, because the whole purpose of it is to be a big surprise. So consistently, that deck popping up is almost out of the question. It just doesn't happen right now. The card pool is not deep enough to allow that sort of thing to be the case. So moving into this, I think it would be very surprising for me to see Reels playing an aggro paladin. I just don't see it happening. He's the kind of guy to play these strong mid-range value cards too. So something like Sludge Belcher just fits the bill perfectly as far as he's concerned. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see it in the handlock either, if that is handlock.
Okay. All right. So we're going to resume the series. It seems like we're just going to hop on Alchemix's POV and go without Reels for a little bit. But he'll still be playing. So let's hop into the game and find out what happens in game number 2. Seems to be like the Paladin of choice. And Alchemix, well, he does have that web spinner to lead things off, which is a little exciting because you're almost guaranteed to pop that thing against the Paladin.
This card's actually like really cool now that I'm seeing it in action.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a cool novelty to think like, oh, I can draw King Crush if I want. But are we going to see a tournament game where this draws King Crush and ends up being a difference?
Right.
Like, is someone going to get crushed?
The Beast. And you're like, well, I was not anticipating this. And you Iron Beak Owl your own beast so that you can't get the Finkelhorn. That's so crazy.
If there is one card that I don't think that I will ever see happen in tournament play, it's the Finkel Einhorn token that the Beast makes. But there's a way that it can happen now, and it's from Web Spinner because Web Spinner is such a playable card.
Definitely. I'm just looking forward to it. And it's cool. It's funny just because of the range that possibilities that it has. Like at worst, even if it's Angry Chicken, is essentially Web Spinner replacing itself, and you have a way to kind of activate your other beasts with something like Houndmaster or Kill Command.
Yep. So if Reels plays turn 1 Leopardum here, I'd be very surprised.
No, that'd be too bananas, I think. To kind of bring it into it. Reels is capable of playing these aggro decks. He played Zoo for a long time. But I think the Paladin's right up his alley. And he understands how to play it as well from watching you stream a little bit.
Alchemix has already got golden. He's got a golden coin, by the way. So he's already got golden web spinners. Just right out the gate. He's just like, no, I have to have golden cards. Oh, and look at Reels' hand. It is Control Paladin.
Okay, with the sludges.
Sludge Belcher. Haunted Creeper doing a really good job at shutting down this this web spinner, by the way.
Yeah, how annoying is that? You push out the Eagle Horn Bow and deal with it immediately?
Exactly what I was thinking. Is there considerations this Eagle Horn Bow?
I think so. Well, let's see what he draws off the web spinner as well. Maybe that can give him the drop he needs on turn 3. Because most likely Reels is going to have to attack into it to some extent.
Yep. Would be very surprised if Reels chose not to attack this web spinner.
Unless he wants to go for a meta play of some kind where he uses an Acolyte and kind of forces the web spinner to trade into it.
Let me think.
Well,
oh, wow.
Considering this possibility. All right.
Wow.
So he is going to go for that meta play. All right. I mean, he's kind of out of the woods of the Houndmaster play because his opponent won't be on 3 mana.
Yep.
But it is curious, and let's see what Alchemist is able to follow up with this. He doesn't. He's going to obviously kill the 1/1.
That shows how well both of these players know the value of aggression, though. Is that Reels knows that this web spinner is going to have to trade into one of his minions to prevent him drawing an extra card off the Acolyte of Pain. Yep. And Alchemix knew that one of these web spinners was likely going to have to attack into... I'm sorry, that one of his opponent's spiders was going to have to attack into the web spinner. And so it's gone to the next level.
Where neither player attacks into it, yeah.
That's how aggressive these players are. They're just always going for that extra point of damage. And that's the difference between winning and losing a lot of these games, especially when you're the aggro player, is every point of damage matters. And that really showing through in this game. I think Alchemix, he's almost like okay with giving his opponent an extra card here, I think. I don't think he's going to attack with his Eagle Horn Bow into the Acolyte. I think he's just going to let it go.
You can sneak in 1 more point of damage.
Oh,
Well, I mean, I don't think you're necessarily afraid of something like Blessing of Kings, right? No one's really playing that at the moment.
I don't think so. I think it's important to attack the Acolyte, though, because you've already committed to the explosive trap at this point. So if your opponent runs a token into your web spinner, oh, this could potentially be bad.
Quite hit the mark.
Oh, and Alchemix
Okay.
thinks he made a mistake there. I'm curious.
Huh.
What he's wrong.
Is he trying to bait his opponent, maybe?
Oh, wow.
What if he was trying to sell it as freezing trap or something?
I don't know. He should be putting one of these 1/1s into the spider, I think, though. I think that's a... I don't know, maybe he just doesn't want to kill the spider. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be avoiding giving your opponent a beast. He has a Kodo! Oh, man!
Oh, he wanted to draw a second card off the Acolyte. That's actually a really heads-up play by Reels. But he wanted the information of what the trap was prior to drawing the second card.
Yeah, I think the mana cost was about inconsequential either way.
Yep.
Okay, well, Alchemix now has kind of curved out really nicely because of this. It's just amusing how that's kind of worked out in his benefit. And I think that's exactly what Blizzard intended when they designed that card.
Web spinner fetched a Kodo. That's so insane. Lotheb's got to be coming down here, right? I don't know. Maybe it's Sludge Belcher. This is another tough spot.
Well, yeah, you're really. I mean, at this stage, you know, if you're Alchemist, you're just hoping for no Kodo because that's often very played in Paladin decks, especially with Elder Peacekeeper. I think the second best option though is the Sludge for sure. It kind of stalls it.
I like Lotheb too because it prevents your opponent from kill commanding.
I guess you're right. I like the fact that it's not very clean though. Your opponent still can't just Houndmaster and expect to push through here.
Wow, these are tough turns from these players.
It's definitely
Alchemist,
not
I
as
think.
clear as it used to be like a week ago.
Yeah, I think Alchemix is definitely losing his bow here.
I think it's fine. A lot of mid-range hunters don't even play two bows. They play one bow, and he's already gotten value off of an explosive trap for an extra charge.
Right.
So it's not like hang on to the bow unless you're trying to lethal something or you're really trying to pick up a good trade.
Oh, he's going to use the Stone Tusk Boar. I like this.
All right. Kind of showing off the value of being able to kind of pressure with Houndmaster, but
Now
how much
there-
is he to a Black Knight?
That's sort of weird. I don't know. See, there I feel like using the bow is... I would rather save it for a minion, I think. I think it's better to just hang on to
For
it.
the inevitable Peacekeeper and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Oh my gosh!
Quality.
Equality is a huge draw right now. That's effectively dealing 10 points of damage.
And he can even keep his Pyromancer alive if he Holy Lights himself. Equality's first. Pyromancer. Holy Light or even Humility. Something with that
I
respect.
don't even know if he uses Pyromancer. I think he just makes more tokens.
Well,
Or
makes
this
he
guy.
plays
Yeah, this works
Peacekeeper.
too. The equality just... It takes care of the 4-9, which is the major issue right now.
Yeah.
And then he also develops his board, and he gets to keep his Pyromancer, because the Pyromancer can sweep out stuff later between the Humility and the Holy Light. I like this a lot.
Sure, sure.
And Kodo just having to get played as a 3/5, that's not how you want to do it. But he's trying to get something on the board. Look at this. His hand is all combo pieces right now. He's just got to try to get something through.
But in the following turns, he's going to be able to be more comfortable with that. But Lotheb also throws a big wrench into those plans.
Lotheb is a big problem here, I think, if you're in Alchemix spot. Because I think one of the things you're relying on is being able to Buzzard Unleash. And if Reels is paying attention, a couple of those cards have been in his hand for a while. So, granted, one of the cards is fresh, but there is that thought in the back of your head too, like, what if he draws it? So he needs to consider everything this turn, and he has plenty of time to think about it. And I think when you conclude it, that Lotheb's just the play. It's very strong against Hunter's Mark. I'm sorry, it's very strong against Kill Command here, and it prevents your opponent from using a Buzzard combo.
And that allows, I mean, in the future turns as well, you're kind of expecting to drop Tyrion eventually, start putting pressure back.
Right. Wow.
And I think this paves the way for it. Oh, he draws a Kill Command, just like you mentioned, so good call.
Oh, wow. Wow, Lotheb doing a lot of work. I'm very impressed with this card so far. Everyone knew it was going to be good, but I'm seeing it used in spots where I didn't expect it to be usable, or quite as effective, rather. And it's doing just as much work as it would against pretty much any spell-based deck.
Wow. It's essentially as if Alchemist just passed here.
True Silver Champion. This has got to be a Tyrion turn, right?
It feels like it because he didn't have any drop whatsoever, right? He didn't have a Savannah High Main. He didn't have a Snapjaw. And I think now that you can get the Tyrion ahead of the curve and be able to respond to any big threat of Hunter, Hunter can't build a board, which means that the Paladin can now develop its board while being able to answer minions. And that's where Paladin truly shines.
Something
When it's
sort
able
of
to kind of
funny to
answer.
note is there any merit to actually
I wonder.
taking your tokens off the board by just suiciding them so that way your opponent can't unleash the hounds you more? Because if your opponent didn't do anything last turn, what's their hand?
Right, he'd already used the Hunter's Mark. Maybe it's a kill command or something.
Right. I think
So
there's a lot
I
of
think there is merit to suiciding your tokens.
yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Well, conveniently,
Something
it's
to
going to
think
work
about.
out for Alchemist to draw an extra card. But he's still staring at a lot of damage in response. He can also kill command off from this as well.
Yep.
Oh.
Whoa.
Oh, my.
That's really weird.
Oh, my. He's going to go for a lethal
Oh my
setup.
gosh.
Roy. But then the Tyrion's going to come into play as well. And I think
Oh, and-
Reel's realized he's got Holy Light and Tyrion. So he's got ways to kind of stall the game for a long time.
Wow, that is not the turn I thought this game was going to take.
Whoa. That escalated very quickly, Admirable.
Yep. He's got to think. He's got to think for a long time in this turn because it could be very important to suicide this token. This is something he needs to think about because this is moving into a turn where your opponent has basically screamed at you that they have Leroy,
Yeah, Leroy Unleash.
and he's just
Too bad he can't kill his opponent.
Oh, he's 2 damage off.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think you do Tyrion, though, don't you? Because you already used the kill command, so how many times is he going to be able to direct damage?
Well, if your opponent has also told you that he has Leroy,
Oh, whoa.
Holy Light, and Consecration is basically doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's true. You're putting out the you're basically gain 6 damage right there. But I
Plus
think
5, 11. He's
Is
got
that
13 damage. Oh my gosh.
does he have Timberwolf? No.
He doesn't have Timberwolf in his hand. I don't know if he can Leroy this turn. Wow, he's at 2. He's got to make something happen.
Yeah.
I don't know how he wins this game.
He already used a Hunter's Mark as well, so what can you really draw? Alchemix's gamble did not pay off because the Holy Life has put him outside of range. So now Alchemix in a very tight squeeze where every single thing on the board actually really does matter.
Yep. If he
Oh.
uses his full combo too, by the way, he's out of mana, so he can't even draw into Timberwolf because it costs 9 mana to use his full combo. So he'd have to kill him with any 0-cost spells he draws, and there's no 0-cost spells that can end this. Wow.
Do you just draw then and see what you can get? Try to remove, but then that's playing so passive. You need to draw a Hunter's Mark or bust.
I mean, you can't kill him this way, so you have to.
So
have
what,
to make
full
something
double
happen.
buzzard and unleash?
I don't know if you double buzzard, because if you double buzzard, then you're still basically out of mana. You only have 2 mana left to work with.
He doesn't even
I think
have another kill command though. Didn't he use both kill commands? Oh wow, he's just gonna concede. Alchemix is given up for now, but this Hunter's already done his work. It's evened up the series right for now for reals, but Alchemix now can kind of take initiative with whatever decks he has left with the Warrior, and I believe his Warlock got banned. So he has Warrior, and he has one more deck left I can't remember at the moment. The Shaman, that's what it is.
Yep. Wow, that was a brutal game. Lotheb really shining through, and sort of again Paladin. It's one of those matchups that I think can get pretty tricky for Hunter because the heals throw off your math a lot, and it's always like an unexpected thing, and it kind of like you want to sink in your chair when your opponent plays 2 mana, gain 6 health, but it just happens to be really good versus Hunter.
The Paladin is the master at baiting people and being able to make them overextend into situations that they don't want. That's for sure. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, game number 3 between Alchemix versus Real. You're watching WEC North American Qualifier. Welcome back, everybody, to the World Esports Championship for North America. We're in the middle of a series between Alchemix and Reels. Reels kind of had a rocky start with internet and a loss, but now he's even up the series with his Paladin deck. So Paladin, once again, doing some work and showing some viability here in the metagame. It's alive and kicking. And Alchemix now has a turn between his Warrior and his Shaman deck, which I don't know how good Warrior fares against Paladin. Again, from what I've been hearing from people, it struggles a little bit. Similar to the concept of Shaman, how do you kind of efficiently remove the tokens over and over? But maybe with things like Undead Ghoul, that can make it a little bit more comfortable dealing with Paladin. So I'm not exactly sure how Naxxramas impacts these current matchups in terms of the Plague Wing, but I have to imagine that these guys are definitely accounting for it and how the new cards kind of play into their strengths and weaknesses.
I think that Warrior actually gets a better tool here than Paladin does in Sludge Belcher, in that one of the things that's most efficient versus Warrior is that True Silver Champion. It's able to shred armor away. It's able to take out a lot of your 4 health minions that are really important. Things like Armor Smith, or if you're running Frothing Berserkers. And Sludge Belcher does a really good job of standing in the way of a True Silver Champion. It's a lot like Druid of the Claw is in Druid decks. It forces your opponent to attack it with the True Silver Champion, which is the tool that I think is making Paladin such a strong force. When you combine all of its utility with how powerful True Silver is, it ends up to being a very big game impact. So Sludge Belcher, I think, is going to be more beneficial for Warrior than it is for Paladin. But the way that the long game pans out, it's still sort of untold. If he's got something like Ysera and Deathwing in his deck, I think you definitely give a big favor over to Warrior. But I think that if he's sort of playing a more traditional removal and finisher suite, that this game could go either way.
Man, I'm sad again from not seeing Deathwing in that previous Word game. But maybe Alchemix, on the off chance, somehow got a peek at Reynad's deck and decided to copy it. I don't know. I don't think that's the case. But let's jump into game and find out what's going to happen in game number 3. Alchemix does have the choice of class, and he does choose the Warrior. Picks up a Brawl immediately, which could be impactful, just because the state of which he builds it. But I think he wants a faster start than that. But I do think Brawl is one of those cards where you definitely want it against Paladin.
I can agree with that.
No, it also gets Unstable Ghoul, so let's see how it performs against Paladin early game too.
This is sort of a tough spot here for Reels. Like, how badly does he want to keep True Silver Champion?
Well, there's 2 chances. Obviously, you toss back the first one just because of the efficiency play, but I think keeping 1, there is justification for it. There are a lot of minions with 4 health or lower. The Acolytes, the Armor Smiths, even the Unstable Ghoul. The True Silver Champion deals with it pretty efficiently.
Wow, look at this. Now he's thinking about keeping the Sludge Belcher too. I don't know what you keep here. This is a new experience for me as well.
Well, Kodo is very effective against those minions for the same reason. They have low attack, high health, so you're able to deal with them pretty effectively. So I think that's a great.
The Kodo makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
It's all the other stuff that's sort of questionable.
Yeah.
Like, how good is Haunted Creeper in this matchup? That's the sort of thing I don't know. I don't feel like I want to draw Haunted Creeper. I feel like I'd just rather draw True Silver Champions.
But then the Haunted Creepers, they're not that great late game for Paladin anyways, and it effectively does the same thing as hero powering for multiple turns. But then the Unstable Ghoul is like that one card which is really annoying for the Haunted Creeper to deal with. It's effectively the big bully in the school playground.
Yep. Alchemix has got golden Unstable Ghoul. Does he just have all golden Nax cards so far?
I mean, why not? Most of these pros, they're playing all the time every day, so they have a lot of dust accumulated, so just craft it immediately.
I like Armor Smith here.
I do. It synergizes very well. But at the same time, you also could deal with... you can deal with the Haunted Creeper ahead of the curve rather than behind, which means if he deals with some way to kind of push and kill, say he coined out a True Silver, then all of a sudden you're not able to deal with the 1/1s as efficiently. I guess you do have Armor Smith, but it's so much cleaner to kill it right afterwards with its Death Rattle to kill off the tokens.
Yeah. Reels is a tough spot here, too. This is a lot of health your opponent's going to be potentially gaining. I don't know how much longevity Paladin has. Like, I'm curious what Paladin's cap on damage is. Like, is that something that Alchemix can legitimately get to? Can he just out-life his opponent?
Huh. And, with Warrior has so many decks, so many threats in the deck to kind of keep following it up. I don't know how well toe-to-toe Paladin can go with, But I think, equality also does give this paladin the sense of longevity, where the longer the game goes and the longer you can go without equality being used, you always have the upper hand in the matchup, in my opinion, control versus control. I mean, that's where paladin truly shines. Whoa! We'll talk about using it early. Okay. That is really interesting.
Yeah,
oh my goodness, the death rattles don't... The order play made all the difference. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I thought about that right as the equality. I raised an eyebrow, and then I realized it's like, wait a minute, this is actually pretty important. It's like, this is a testament to sort of where Reels is at, where he's thinking in that line, where he's like, how much damage can I actually deal? Like, if this goes on for too long, is my opponent just going to be completely out of reach of me being able to kill him?
Yeah.
So like he needs to get access from repetitive damage, which is something that's hard enough for him to deal. And I feel like he can fend off a lot of his opponent's attacks, but it's something that he certainly thinks about, is how much, like, that he has a finite amount of damage that he's able to deal. That's coming into an account.
That was very clever. Again, Blizzard has reworked the death rattles to work in the order that they were played, so it's causing a little bit more thinking and hesitation, which is exactly what they want anyways.
Yep. Sludge Belcher over Kodo here is really interesting, and the reason he would save it is because he just used an equality, so he's going to need some sort of hard removal spells on bigger minions.
Yeah,
so
he has a Peacekeeper already.
Yeah, he's looking at clearing out the board and then using this as a hard removal spell on something bigger, something like a Baron Geddon or an Alexstrasza, perhaps.
I like it. I like that kind of alternative to keep. Plus, you have, like, a Sludge is still great at stabilizing the board. You tack into this Sludge, though.
I don't think you do. It's tough. It can go either way. I think the biggest argument for attacking is that Whirlwind's a lot weaker from your opponent, because they also have a 1 health minion, but they can just run that into your Sludge Belcher. I don't think it matters too much either way. I think probably not attacking is better. I think you would rather use your Consecrate to clear out the last 2 health, and then follow it up with an attack, as opposed to the other way around.
Sure. It makes sense. Karen feels like a really obvious slam, but he also had opportunity to trade with Cool Task, but he's going to be passing here, it looks like, too. I think Karen is really important to develop the earlier it is against a less intimidating board, so I can definitely get behind that.
Yep. Ooh, this is another Consecrate.
Let's see. So if he's able to kind of deal with the Sludge Belcher, he can Consecrate and kind of weaken the board a lot, but he also does weaken his own board.
This looks like an attack into the Sludge Belcher and then Consecrate. And then use the Gnomish to clear up the 1/2. And then the question, I think, is whether or not you make a token or use the Aldor Peacekeeper. And I think that making a token is slightly better. The Sludge Belcher is going to be soaking up an attack from the Karen, so the Bane's going to be going into a 4/5 token. Ooh, that's a backwards order there.
Yeah.
Reels just actually dealt his minion 3 extra
2 extra damage. Yep.
Yep.
A little bit of misstep, and also opens himself up to a Whirlwind play.
Yeah, a little poor sequencing there. Oh, or an Unstable Ghoul.
Well, Unstable Ghoul is a little bit later in that, so he won't be able to collect it immediately. And it also synergizes with the Acolyte, which we've been seeing more and more being played, not only in Warrior, but even in Paladin. So he does have that under his belt.
This feels like a really good turn for Gorehowl, but at the same time, it's kind of not. This is a tough one. Like, how badly do you value your Acolyte here?
For honor.
The Acolyte develops his board as well, versus Gorehow's a reaction to it.
Yeah, it's 2 very different development routes.
Yep. I kind of like it. I kind of like being able to play the Acolyte here. And you do have the Undead Ghoul to kind of stall out, and almost, in a way, guarantee that you draw 2 cards, unless your opponent's playing, well, unless your opponent chose to do Kodo now.
Reels has got a lot of cards, though. How early are we going to see Tyrion in this game? Is Tyrion potentially played this turn?
Are Warriors still running Black Knight, by the way?
That's a good question.
From your experience?
I feel like when you add in Unstable Ghoul and you add in Sludge Belcher, there's just, frankly, you're losing a lot of ability to have room for it.
Sure.
Ooh, look at this.
So Defender of Argus, that enables him to almost consecrate clear based off how everything's going to pan out from that point on.
Yep, that'd be a really interesting play.
Kodo is like a 50-50 gamble.
Yeah, I don't like Kodo here. Again, you've committed yourself to the plan of keeping Kodo with Aldor Peacekeeper, so I think it's tough to deviate from that at this point, especially when you have alternate plans.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Okay, so he's going to proc this immediately, and might go for the... Oh, Kodo play immediately? Nah.
Well, Aldor Peacekeeper makes a lot of sense here now, because it puts up the extra taunt, and he drew Humilities to go along with his Kodo.
Okay. That is important to know, so that way he has a combo, even at cheaper minions as well, and you could put up 4/4 on the field, which is nice. Alchemix picks up and execute. He's also, his hand is just really clunky. He's got double Fire War Axe with the Gore Howl. How do you kind of push this all out in the course of a few turns?
I think you got to get the Gore Howl down. This is something else he was considering too. The turn he wanted to Gore Howl is because he did have a Fiery War Axe in his hand.
So in that respect, the Fire War Axe is one of the worst draws.
Yeah, he wants to think about how his future turns pan out, and since he has so much weapon damage, he needs to get his weapon damage active. But it's like attacking a Paladin when they're at 30 isn't really what you want to do, because Guardian of Kings is such a valuable minion when they're able to use it in that regard. Like, it clears up all the incidental damage and gives them a 5/6, so it's counteracting all that work you would be doing by just swinging with your weapons anyway. This has been some strong play from Real so far.
Yeah, I think so. I really like the way he's been able to disrupt his opponent, think many turns in advance, and, you know, conveniently draw into ways that can improve his play in future turns and even deviate from it.
Yep.
So he's making up game plans as he goes along. You know, Tyrion here feels very easy and obvious, but I also like the idea of being able to respond to your opponent and continue to build up with, like, tokens. Just the more you token, the harder it is for your warrior to kind of deal with. But I think, you know, Tyrion's almost
shield
too good to pass
slam.
up.
That's a pretty good one. This looks like he's just going to have to take a lot of damage here, honestly. What other option does he have?
Shield block, shield slam, costs 6 mana with everything.
I really think you want to save shield slam right now. Like, you're still at 30 health, or you're at 29 rather. So you're not like uncomfortable using your life total as a resource.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can get that. You can get the value out of it immediately and cycle
I don't know
through.
if he needs to. I just don't know if he needs to. Is all.
Okay, it's a fair assessment.
Yeah, because it's such a big swing turn too. Like, it surprises your opponent when you're able to shield slam.
Yeah.
This is not like an inappropriate way to deal with it. I mean, this is still a very
that
fine
is the
way to
biggest
deal with
menu, right? There's no other bigger targets other
Reals
than that.
has got Black Knight, that's for sure. Yep. And this is sort of the spot that Alchemix is okay with being in. Also, is this has just been a 5/6 now. It hasn't really done a lot of work in terms of health totals.
The timing of it is so annoying for Alchemix to deal with as well, because the Gore Howl's at
Gore Howl
5.
just went to 5.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
exactly. Very difficult. So the timing of everything has been very precise from Reals and making his opponent's life as miserable as possible.
I guess you just attack the 1/1 in this case. Wow, and that Ashbringer is doing a lot of work. Wow, he really doesn't want to do this. Oh gosh, that hurts. You know, he does have Ysera in hand though. His opponent's got a Humility Kodo combo. That's why Reals, by the way, is cleaning up all of these minions with this Ashbringer. Is he wants this Kodo Humility combo to stay alive for as long as possible.
Oh, definitely. Don't give it any extra targets. Make it less RNG. That's a nice draw, the Sludge, to just kind of improve the board position.
Yep, he's actually just trying to grind his opponent out of the game at this point. And this is what you were talking about. The longer this game goes, the more these 1/1s start adding up, and it applies a lot of pressure to your opponent.
Just think of it as like a delayed hero power of 1 damage, but that continues to stack as well. So no matter what min you put out, the accrued interest that you gain from the Silver Hand recruits are actually very useful.
Gore Howl's 1 damage off from being effective again too.
I didn't even think about that. That's so annoying.
This order from Reals has been very strong so far. And he gets a Laughing Sisters, but he's going to get a Rude Awakening from this Kodo. And Holy Light, that is a completely irrelevant draw at this point. Reals has very much seized control of this game at this point.
Oh man, see you later.
These 1/1s are just going to keep coming. And I don't even think he needs to attack, but he's going to anyway. I don't even know why he attacks here. I would just keep the weapon back.
Well, he has True Silver, so the idea is you kind of put those damage in. True Silver functions almost the same. There's really not that much of a damage difference when you have tokens out.
Alchemist has had almost no plays.
Okay.
This has got to be 3 or 4 turns in a row now.
Well, he does have the Alkalite Whirlwind, so now he can make a play. But he's going to need a lot more than that. He gets a Lotheb. I guess you just kind of
executes.
the last sister.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the execute here because the execute's like his last removal spell. So if his opponent has something like Ragnaros, now you're sitting without a removal spell to Ragnaros now. Like your opponent's potentially got 4 huge minions in their deck, and you still have some life that you can pay.
Sure,
especially because you're armoring up every turn, and you have 2 weapons in your hand, so you got to get something done.
Yeah, it's completely fair. I understand exactly what you're saying. But maybe Alchemist is playing under the assumption that most Paladin decks nowadays don't really run Ragnaros. They usually have everything scaled back, or scaled in front, actually, so that way they're having more mid-rangey creatures. And usually the only threat they have late game is Tyrion, Guardian of Kings, and then they grind you out with other stuff. Really powerful mid-game creatures.
It's a fair assumption.
Huh. Well, not very exciting plays for Alchemist either way.
I would
He's kind of tossing something to just die.
Yeah, I would attack this 1/1, I think. I think this is really strong to attack the 1/1. Force your opponent to use the second charge of True Silver and then follow up with Lotheb. And then Lotheb remains safe. And you finally stick a threat to the board that maybe you can get something done with. And he's got a couple more charges in the Gorehowl to keep the tokens at bay, too.
That's hilarious. Just use it to just be the minion killer, or the token killer.
Yep.
Alright, well, Real's finally starting to run out of gas until he top decks something like Lay on Hands, which I'm sure he's kind of concerned about right now, making sure that if his opponent has something like Alex and Gromosh, then how does he actually respond to something like that?
That could end up being very valuable later on.
Yep. So Alchemist is still certainly not out of it yet, but at the same time, he's kind of got to come up with something quick. See what he cycles closer to. So he gets the Gromosh.
You finish off this. Do you finish off the Harvest Golem?
I mean, it makes Brawl much stronger in the further turns.
Yeah, I think that's what he's working towards. Is he's working towards a big Brawl turn.
Okay, let's see what Reels gets.
He's been stuck with Black Knight for such a long time too.
There's not really targets you're worth Black Knighting other than the sludges.
He just wants the Black Knight.
Oh man, well look at that, the Lay on Hands at 13
but he can't
mana.
Use it.
Wow. That was the top deck you were looking for, but not like this. Not like this.
He's in a very safe position though. He's not really staring down too much. But Alchemist, these are the turns he needed. He needed to be able to get into these later stages of the game where he's able to kind of start taking initiative on the board.
That is, you're absolutely right, because if he has something like the Alex combo next turn, it's still going to make it just as difficult to kind of push through. But he does have a lot of healing as well. So he does have the ability to kind of go back virtually to full health.
He's starting to run low on life too, Alchemist is. He's down to 11.
That's true. Do you really like holding on to that Black Knight?
Oh my gosh.
Wait, Sylvanas. Okay.
That's a really good draw right now.
So Sylvanas with the potential to brawl as well. That's a 0/1 Gorehowl, by the way. Isn't that supposed to go away? Isn't this supposed to break?
No, it's the durability. You just can't. You actually can't attack with it at 0.
Oh yeah! Wow, that's actually so funny. Okay, I didn't think about that. Just like, isn't that supposed to go away? But guess not.
Wait, hang on a second. If you heroic strike and attack with a Gorehowl while it's a 0/1, does it go to a -1?
Huh.
I've never been there before.
That's really interesting.
Well, I got something to do later on. I'm gonna figure that out.
Okay, well, Reels now can use his Lay on Hands, and he has a Harrison Jones, so he's able to kind of take away this Fiery War Axe. I feel like there's no better time to use Equality, though, to kind of remove this kind of board. I think you can justify by kind of passing here, but oh man. Tough call to make.
Wow.
Tough call to make.
I like the aggression. Trading 10 damage for 3 damage.
It's still very unlikely that his opponent is able to kill him the following turn.
Sludge Belcher's a really good pickup too.
Yeah, but he's gonna get Black Knighted.
I don't know if that's such a bad thing right now.
Because then it plays into Brawl.
Well, look at how much damage that Alchemix is just putting together. Like, Reels is at 15 right now, and he's facing down. I mean, he's facing down lethal on the board, so he has to make something happen this turn.
Okay, well, he's going to a quality combo immediately. And leave it down to that just 1/2 token, and he does have the Black Knight immediately to deal with it. Oh,
Yeah,
well, I guess he can open.
I really like the Holy Light here, because otherwise he's able to die to something like Inner Rage or Cruel Taskmaster on a Gromish with an
That's a
X-Wing.
good point. That's a good point.
Yep.
He has at 15 health, exactly. So I think you needed to do that for sure.
Yeah, and that Fiery War Axe. It's in a museum now.
It's in a better place.
This is tough, too.
Second equality has been used, right? So now do you feel like Gromash can come out?
Right. Are you worried about Big Game Hunter, or are you worried about something like Outdoor Peacekeeper on this guy?
I mean, BGH was one of those cards being cut because you have other options to kind of improve it. You don't have much time as well. How many cards does Alchemix had? I think he hovered over. He had like 2 cards. Was that correct? I don't remember. I don't know how many cards he has left. He's just going to go for it.
Oh my gosh.
And the Fiery War Axe to kind of put pressure back on his opponent.
And Reels actually doesn't have an answer for this 10-4. Oh my gosh.
Not yet, at least. What if he top decks something important? He has to use Enormous Inventor to dig deeper. Oh, he has a Peacekeeper!
That is a huge draw right now. That was his I think it's his only answer left in the deck for it.
I think so.
Oh, wow.
He does have Shield Block, Shield Slam. Oh, man. I think the last card is Alex Straza then. Oh, he doesn't even play Alex.
He doesn't have Alex Straza in his deck.
Okay, so I think he's just out of damage. He's out of damage and he's out of luck. There's nothing else that can help Alchemix. There's just no way for him to win this game. You can't Armor Smith your opponent to death.
Not here, I don't think you can. My goodness. 2 Gnomish Inventors. 2 Harvest Golems. This deck is just about value now. This is just valued in. I kind of like this deck.
And then Rios has threats to follow it up with Cairn, Lotheb, Black Knight. He saved these cards and really tried to optimize their value, but he's kind of had so much in other departments he didn't need it.
I wonder.
You know, if he had a little bit more armor, he might be able to just shield slam the face.
My
Oh man, and have lethal in that department, that'd be so funny.
I mean, does he have to get this lucky on the brawl?
Oh,
I guess he does.
Oh wait, we don't even know what's gonna happen. It might look like the Harvest Golem, but I don't know what it is. Oh, Grom lives. Wow.
Caller. Yeah, there's no way he can deal enough damage in time. This is 2 a turn, and he's just gonna fatigue out before then.
Not with True Silver in play. I think Reels is just gonna play the very slow waiting game and let your opponent run out of damage. And Alchemist is out of Ox. He's out of air.
Yep. He's nothing left. And that's going to be game 2 over to Reels now. Really touting how powerful Paladin can be with all of these value cards. He's getting a 2-for-1 in almost every step of the game.
I think
and
so.
And then what's happening is Alchemix is getting back those 2-for-1s. Like, he's able to clean up a lot of these board positions. And it's these just like, when it's all said and done, Reels is up a couple of cards because all of his cards are focused around grinding out his opponent. And so Warrior wants to have these big answers for big threats. It can take down basically anything, but when you throw at it a bunch of value minions, we saw it right there. The deck started to crumble apart.
What, he had to use his Execute and Gorehowl in order to remove the Guardian of Kings. He had to use an Execute on Kodo, which already claimed value in the first place.
Right.
Great analysis. He's basically had to play inefficient the entire game, while his opponent was able to dictate. For all intents and purposes, it was like the Warrior versus Shaman, in which Warrior struggles if it's not able to kind of remove things very efficiently. You have to kind of spend all these premium spells and cards in order to kind of deal with what's on the board.
Yep.
And now Alchemix is down to his Shaman deck, and seeing how he's able to face off against Rails. I think Rails is prepared and played his deck very masterfully, and I'm impressed with how he's able to kind of employ the Paladin with the new Naxxramas cards. Very nicely done.
Yep. This is also a matchup I think that he's not too excited to play. Because he all of his totems get swept out by a single Consecrate. So that's not the spot he wants. That's not the spot he wants to be in.
Nope.
He wants to be he wants to be freely making totems and then using a flame tongue to get major value later on in the game. But frankly, I don't know if that's a possibility. All of these mid-range value minions are honestly, I didn't realize how powerful it was until I starting to see it in action now. Sludge Belcher is making a big difference on how this Paladin deck is able to operate.
For sure,
This is going to be a force coming. Especially after this tournament, you're going to see a lot of Paladin on ladder. Be ready for it, guys. That deck.
Well, I mean, the Paladin is
good.
partially good because there is no ability for Miracle to be played, assuming you want your Paladin to be played all the time. You can just ban it out. Although Miracle still dominates ladder. So be careful, youngins. As much as it might be tempting to play Paladin, don't get too uppity.
I'm going to play Paladin afterwards, just to show you.
Just prove me wrong. Go on a mission. I saw you, Honorable. You're streaming. You like to prove me wrong. You were using the basic only cards for Nax Ramus. That was really ballsy of you, man.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
That was
It
fun.
gives you a chance to exploit the AI right into mulligans. Alchemist, Shaman, he's on his last leg, and Reels. What do you call this? What do you call this Paladin deck? I don't know how to what do you refer to it as? Do you just call it a Paladin deck? That seems so boring. There's got to be something less boring than that.
Surely there's somebody that kind of pioneered this deck that you can kind of attribute it to. Other than that, it's just a straight up control Paladin. That's essentially what it is at its core. All you do is remove and stall as long as you can. Play the late game threats.
Wow, look at Lotheb staying in the hand. That's very interesting. Is Lotheb that good?
Against Shaman, I feel like it makes total sense. You can disrupt so many important turns with removals and feral spirits and whatnot. On the flip side, by the way, how good is Lotheb when you play something like feral spirits? Oh man, that's really good.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Another Argent Squire. Something that you've seen out of some of these Shaman decks is that they'll run one Argent Squire. So if something to consider is if Alchemist has put Egg into this deck, as a lot of people have, you'll see a lot more early game minions. Like Haunted Creeper isn't surprised to be coming out. 2 Argent Squires, I think, is indicative of the fact that he's running Eggs and Flame Tongue Totems. Taking a little bit more of an aggressive stance. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think Reels just continues to use hero power here. I don't really see a reason for much else.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slap fight in the beginning. Nothing too threatening. I think you're also kind of just waiting out to see what your opponent's doing, because they both have the ability to react to each other very well. Normally, what's in the deck is able to respond to each other very easily.
Yep. Another strange turn. These turns have been really weird early on. I think it's pretty rare that you see this sort of stuff. Like, how important is it to keep toteming? And at the same time, how important is it to develop your board? Do you trade this shield in for the 1/1?
Yeah, you know, how afraid are you of just getting true silvered and outvalued?
Yeah.
Do you want him to kind of bust through and play more efficiently? Do you value Divine Shield? These are all the decisions which, I mean, control players actually froth over. That's why Hearthstone can be skill game if you remove aggro. That was my Hearthstone nerd voice. I don't know. I don't know how else to do it.
I think it was a pretty solid one. You got the point across.
Just
really
remove
well.
all the damage spell, then you have such good, intelligent decision-making game.
I want to see that guy make a guide, by the way. What's that guy's name too? Like what?
I don't know. It's like,
so hard to put a
like,
face with that. It's so hard to put a name with that voice.
I don't know. Thatcher, Eugene, something like that. I'm really sorry to all the people who are actually named that.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Chet. I'm here with my buddy Chad and Theodore. Don't get over Thatcher's guide. Defender of Argus is pretty aggressive here, but I like it. It's you're forcing your opponent to take a stance on all these minions, and so that way you can scale into your Sludge Belcher turns.
I think so. Like, you can't really expect to gain too much value all the time from Defender. But I also really like the Defender in the Paladin deck because, for the same reasons as the Shaman, you have ways to kind of boost your board. It makes sense. If you're playing the trading game, it allows you to do cool stuff. In fact, there's also even cool ways to combo it with Equality in case you want Equality and then do something cool. And then bolster your ranks. But now these guys are just jockeying for position, systematically moving the board. And sure, he plays into something like Consecration, but I think he did a good job removing it. Plus, he got unbound value immediately by getting Overload.
Looking at these boards and the way these games have been panning out, have we seen a turn where turn 5 Sludge Belcher has been bad?
Don't think so. I don't think
This
so.
card is. This card seems monstrous.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly what it is. It's a monster, 3/5, and it does a lot of good work, and it stalls your opponent out. Excuse me.
Ooh, Alec here.
And I guess we get to see like the head-on battle of the which actually affected the board a little bit more with the Azure Drake versus the Belcher.
It feels
That's
to
what
me
it's
like right
replacing
now
in
it's
most
Belcher.
decks.
Yep.
The
Feels like
Belcher
it's
is taking care of the 5-card spot where most classes struggle with, and the Azure Drake was just kind of convenient. Now, Shaman is a deck, or a class rather, that benefits off the Azure Drake a lot more than just simply its body and its mana cost. But at the same time, I kind of have to imagine that, you know, Sludge Belcher is just still really effective for other classes relative to what it gives.
There's two things that are coming into effect here too, is that a lot of 5-drops, they give your opponent initiative and the ability to either attack you or attack your minions, but Sludge Belcher isn't granting your opponent that option. They have to attack Sludge Belcher. So it's even choking out your opponent's option to take a very aggressive stance and just start creating tension on the board and then attacking your life.
Huh.
It's like it's forcing your opponent to make plays that they usually don't have to make.
Yeah, and that 5 health is so clutch on the Belcher too. Just like how annoying it is for everything.
This
You
guy's
can't
really good.
spell power. I mean, now granted, there is a way to deal with it immediately with the Fire Elemental, or even the Hex, if you want to save the Fire Elemental. But I like putting out pressure on the board. Sure, you don't want to extend into equality, but I mean, I just like building it immediately. Yeah, almost too good to pass up.
So he's finding himself in a rough spot, but imagine if those were just Azure Drakes instead. He'd just be almost dead.
Okay.
Oh wow, that Kodo is a really important draw right
Oh,
now.
did you just top deck that? Oh man.
Yes, he did.
Very nice.
That challenges the Azure Drake too.
Okay, but that gives him the ability to just lightning bolt in response for 5 damage.
Wow.
Whoa.
Big draws being exchanged here.
Yeah, and I
And
think
it's coming out with Alchemix on top. 9
it's
points of damage on the board.
it's going to come out to Real's need in a way to kind of stabilize his board once again.
Yep, and Reels has got to be worried now because he hasn't seen a Hex from his opponent either. True Silver Champion, though, is going to be able to start cleaning things up.
It's answer after answer. Back and forth between these two guys. Saves his Harvest Golem.
I'm kind of curious about that. I guess he intends to attack the Azure Drake next turn anyway.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense because otherwise he would just trade the shield and 2 of his Azure Drake's health.
It makes more sense. Yeah, it makes more sense the way you kind of put that because
If Reels had something like a Holy Light in his hand, you might have seen a different play because then he would be able to Wild Pyromancer and Holy Light to clear out the Drake afterwards.
True. I think with the low card count at the moment, he needs to play as efficiently as possible. You lose that opportunity cost of missing out on the hero token, which can allows you to just continue to build a board and have something in play. Maybe that can remove the Divine Shield rather than using the 2/1 damage golem as a response.
How long should Alchemix be willing to hold this Blood Mage Thalnos?
I don't feel like he's in like a serious case where he needs to card draw though. Like I feel like having the ability to do a really good Lightning Storm or whatever you draw off the top, like Earthshock, is really important too.
It's tough. I think I'd rather have the card. I think an average card right now is better than the possibility of one spell power later.
I don't think it's a very clear cut thing, but I do think there is merit to retaining it. I think when you do have Valkyria, though, if you get closer to something like Rockbiter, you feel really confident about the game.
That too.
So I think drawing closer to it is nice.
Reels is in another tough spot. Does he attack this Unbound before it starts getting out of control? Or does he take out this Azure Drake now?
Well, he's going to draw to find out the answer. That Holy Light allows for things to be a little bit easier, though. You can clear a lot of these small 1/1s.
He continues to be in tough spots too. I think at this point you got to let the Azure Drake stay.
I think the Unbound represents way too much threat.
I agree.
Sure. The Azure Drakes already collect. I mean, If you leave the Azure Drake, then it just kills the Gnomish Adventure. Actually, either way, it's going to happen because of the Pyromancer.
Right.
So I think in that respect, yeah, just kill off the Unbound.
Yeah, if your opponent follows this with the Feral Spirits, you're going to really be hating your life. Uh-oh. Ugh. Oh, this is tough.
Yeah, it's not very clear. But I think the Unbound, he can kind of sleep a little bit safer because it's just that what if the Unbound gets out of control and you're not able to deal with it, and then you just run out of ways to deal the damage effectively. Paladin wants to get ahead on board, but he's been playing a little bit reactive, and Alchemix has gotten what he wants. He top decks a Fire Elemental.
Oh my gosh. I honestly don't think Lightning Storm's that bad here.
Sure, why not? Clear the board. Build it up. Make it hard for your opponent to come back. Still have mana to allocate the following turn as well.
God, these are still more tough spots though. Because then, do you play the Fire Elemental now? Do you just dome him? I think you just dome him.
What is he at, life count wise? Yeah, I think so.
That's gonna drop him to 18. So
yeah.
610. He's got this is 16 points of damage right here. With this and the Alakir. So Reels has got a pretty clear-cut drop here, I think. But it doesn't feel like he's very happy about it.
No. Especially if he has
his head
hexes as well.
Yep. Yeah, he's going to be really falling behind now. Oh, gosh.
I think this is where the Shaman... Oh, Foul Spirits in a very tight spot. Like, Alchemist is under no threat whatsoever, so it's not like the Feral Spirits needed to come out.
Right.
On the opposite end, too, there is a way that if you save these Feral Spirits and you kind of take your time removing the board and you get in your damage, Alakir and Flame Tongue come out in the following turn for 12 damage burst, assuming you have a minion out.
Yep.
So how do you kind of plan this so that you're able to lethal the following turn?
It's really tough. How much is he worried about equality right now? Is that like a thought in his mind? Your opponent's only got 2 cards? Like, is he thinking about just attacking his opponent for 14 and then letting these wolves soak up damage? And then trying to finish with Alakir? Because if he uses Feral Spirit now and places the Flame Tongue in between his 2 active minions, that's 14 to the face. So it's going to drop your opponent to 10, and then the Flame Tongue plus Alakir would be lethal.
Yeah. Well, he's going to go for the best of both worlds here.
All right, so he's going for the trade. I think trading is probably better, but I think there is some consideration to be made on the other end.
Sure. And when
time
you're
is
this close, I think you don't want to throw away a lead at all.
The only thing I think he's concerned with this way is that the Fire Elemental is a little bit more vulnerable to big game hunting here, but I don't think it's like a major concern of his.
No. And Reels is also holding out to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he has a Doomhammer and he can Harrison Jones back in, but that's going to do it for game number 4. Alchemix should be able to take it on his Alakir.
Unless for some reason he can't counter, like an earthquake or a tsunami happens.
Or a DC.
That's about the only way that Reels is getting out of this one.
Ooh, Doomhammer.
Yep, no reason to show that either.
Unfortunately, it came out a little bit too late for Reels, as he would have loved to collect value and pull back in the card count. But I think the Paladin deck has certainly pulled its weight. It's won 2 games for Reels, and now he's going to go back to his last deck in order to kind of pull out this series win. I believe it was the Warlock that was left for Reels, correct?
That's right. And
okay.
Something to note is that Shaman is very strong versus Handlock, but Alchemix isn't really much known for being a Handlock player. If anyone's ever watched him in the past, he really likes to play Zoo-Lock and variants of Aggro-Lock. But Shaman can do pretty well in those scenarios too, but Reels doesn't know exactly what he's playing against, so it'll be interesting to see how he ends up mulliganing. And if he's able to mulligan properly, I think he does have a slight advantage. But not having that perfect information, I think, can lead to some mulligan mistakes.
Yeah, there is mystery. What is that last deck that Alchemix playing? Who's going to be the one advancing to the bottom half of the winner's bracket semifinals? Find out all this and more when we return. Welcome back, everybody, to the World Esports Championship at Hearthstone, the North American Qualifiers. It's Game 5 between Reels and Alchemix, and how fitting is it that we're going to Game 5 once again? Throughout WEC, even dating back to the EU qualifiers, all the players were so evenly skilled that it was really difficult to kind of pick a favorite, the white horse. And a lot of these series have been going to Game 5. Strife versus Reynad, Alchemist versus Reels. And dating back to EU, I think every series except for the finals and 2 of the winners bracket finals, or winners bracket rather, didn't go to Game 5. Everything else pretty much went to Game 5, and it was very exciting, very tightly contested. Now, once again, we're going to have Shaman versus the Warlock, and Reels will be bringing his Warlock deck to see what he's going to be able to take against Shaman. Now, if it's Handlock, he's going to have a hard time. But maybe, just maybe, Reels is playing a Zoo, which also can give Shaman a hard time too, on the flip side. So, we don't know, because Reels is capable of doing both. And we're about to find out in game number 5, Admirable.
Yeah, I sort of 100% agree with you. If Alchemix can kind of stick to his guns and make the right prediction, it can be kind of tough. But
it's the Handlock.
You have to account for the fact that your opponent could be playing Zoo. It's something that you have to think about.
Sure.
If your
so then Lightning Storm's a keep.
Right. But Lightning Storm's not so good versus Handlock. So,
and then Hex. Oh, that is really difficult. The 50-50.
I think Hex is at least keepable versus Zoo. That's not the worst. The worst one is the Lightning Storm, and whether or not this card gets stranded in your hand versus Handlock, or whether or not it's actually a valuable card. Wow, it looks like he's just going to trust his read, too. Wow, that's a strong play.
Very nice. And he has Earthshock.
That's a pretty good hand.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Reels top decks, the Twilight Drake, and
yeah,
Waz normally very nice. Oh, my God. Reels is going for ultimate mind games.
Yeah, these are reverse Earthshocks.
Check this out, check this out. So Reels is taking his time, making it seem like he may have gotten a bad draw with Warlock. So he's still giving this mystery of whether or not it's the Zoo. But I think this life tap will shatter all of that. But it's cool. All these little small things that they're paying attention to try to give him an edge. You never know. You never know.
Tough. Ooh, Haunted Creeper. It's curving out really well. I'm not sure how much that matters.